Hi people, it's me, Anja, my pronouns all she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new recent reads video. And yes, I'm currently wearing my Goodnight Moon shirt in case you were interested. And you can probably buy it on Etsy or Redbubble like I did. But anyway, August has been a mid-reading month in terms of like quantity, but it's been a good reading month in terms of quality. It's just that for me, it would be more satisfying if the quality and the quantity matched up. But anyway, the first book on this list is called B. Mullins Takes a Shot. And for those of you who are familiar with my content, you would know that this book, I believe, was on my February TBR, and I just didn't find a copy anywhere until I recently went to the library in person a few weeks ago. But anyway, this book is a middle-grade contemporary following a sapphic main character who joined an all-girls hockey team that's kind of losing its funding. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically this book was really good and it was quite awesome, and it was just a fun, lighthearted, sapphic read, which is what I needed at the moment when I read this book a few weeks ago at the beginning of August, because I thought it was so sweet and so wholesome. I love books that focus on like friendships and team sports, and like I appreciated how casual and normalized the queer representation was, because the focus of this book is not necessarily her sexuality. The main conflict of this book has more to do with like the hockey team and everything, and the fact that she has a crush on one of her co-captains is like more of a side story, if that makes any sense. But it was incorporated well, and I enjoyed the friendships and the characters and the plot and the family dynamics and everything. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Top Heavy. This story is a YA contemporary following a young dancer who's trying to get into a more elite dance team with her best friend, whom she's also growing apart from, and it's against the context of how her family can't exactly afford the higher tuition that this team requires. But anyway, this book was so good, and there is a trigger warning on this book for sexual assault. In my opinion, the Goodreads synopsis implies that the sexual assault scene is going to happen earlier in the book than it actually does. It happens in the last third of the book, but I thought it was going to happen in the first third of the book. But anyway, all that to say, this book was so good and I really enjoyed it. I love books that focus on a team sport of any kind, but particularly dance, which is a sport that I grew up around because my sisters were in it. But anyway, this book was so good and it was so awesome. I loved the writing and the friendships and the romance and everything about it. I loved this context of a main character who's always felt sexualized or overly sexualized for her larger chest, and how like she's being perceived and everything as a young woman growing up. Like, I love a character-driven coming-of-age story. This book was so good and it's so underrated. So anyway, with that said, I enjoyed the plot and the writing and everything, so I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Tall Water. This story is a YA contemporary graphic novel that follows a young main character who takes a journey to Sri Lanka to reunite with her estranged mother, and it's set during the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004, which prior to reading this book, I had no idea happened, which makes sense for me because honestly, this sounds bad, I know, but I don't really know much about like the history of natural disasters that didn't happen in America, like during a time where I wasn't able to like walk yet. Does that make any sense? Anyway, this book was so good and it was so well done. The illustrations were so vivid and so good. I love a story that also focuses on journalism, and I think that that is so fascinating, and it's such a good field, and it's a really underrated field, and it honestly really reminds me of how the journalists in Gaza are constantly being killed, because like if the people who are reporting on the events are constantly being killed and controlled by the government who does not want them to report on whatever they're reporting on. I think that that element is so incredibly important. And anyway, I'm preaching to the choir here. But basically, this book was so good. I love the plot and the characters and everything about it, and the illustrations and the story, and like her relationship with her parents was so well done and so vivid and just so good. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 to 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called The Other Side of Imani. This story is a middle-aged contemporary following a young black main character who enters a fashion design contest at her school under an anonymous entry that goes viral. This story is absolutely so fantastic and it's so good. First of all, I loved how the author tackled cultural appropriation, because I think that that is so incredibly important, especially differentiating between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. Like, this book tackled it so well. Second of all, I love the characters and the friendships and the family dynamics and the plot and everything about it. This book is so good and it's so wholesome, and I love the fashion elements. I've always said that in another timeline I would have been a fashion designer, because I think it's so cool to design clothes and the colors and everything. Like, I think it's so cool. But anyway, I digress. This book is absolutely so good and so awesome and so wholesome and sweet and just well done in every single element. So with that said, I rated this book 4 to 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on the list is called This Place Kills Me. This story is a YA historical fiction sapphic graphic novel that follows a young lesbian main character who's investigating her classmate's death at an all-girls boarding school. And first of all, I love an academic setting, particularly at a boarding school, at an all-girls boarding school, following a gay main character. I think that that concept has always been so interesting to me, because like feeling isolated from your peers is an element that I feel is relatable to me. And second of all, I love the characters and the illustrations and like the exploration of like homophobia and bullying and everything. This book was so good and it was so well done. And I think that this book, honestly, is better than Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which I also read a few weeks ago. I think I read the book last month or something. But anyway, I think this book was so good. I love the characters and the plot and the setting and the mystery and everything about it. It felt so good and so well paced and so well done and just absolutely so excellent. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 to 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The last book on this list is called Leaving the Station. This story is a YA contemporary following a non-binary lesbian on a cross-country road trip from New York to Seattle. And it's also about her deconstructing her gender and trying to outrun her mistakes, which is always an interesting and fascinating idea and concept, because you can't really outrun your mistakes before those mistakes always ultimately catch up with you. But anyway, this book was so good and so awesome and so fascinating. And I just really, really enjoyed every single element of it. I love the setting of a train and meeting all these new people and like introducing yourself to them because they have no idea who you are, and getting to almost reinvent yourself, if that makes any sense. I love the idea of like mistaking romantic attraction for gender envy, or maybe that's the other way around. Anyway, I loved the queerness of this book. I loved the romance. It was so well paced and so well done. The characters really come to life so well. The main characters, the side characters, like every single one of them. This book is so excellent and it's so fascinating, and so many elements of it for me were deeply relatable, because frankly, I rated this book 5 stars because I could not stop crying. Like, it's so good. It is so excellent. It's truly one of my favorite books that I have ever read this year, but also just in general. I think this book is excellent and it's brilliant and it's so emotional, and truly I loved it. So anyway, with that said, I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. So in conclusion, my August reading month was plagued, no pun intended, by the fact that a few days after I got home from Europe, I got sick And the moment that, like, my sickness started to, like, recede or whatever, my period started. So that's been fun. My period ended today, though, so we're on the up and up. Anyway, in conclusion, if you enjoy this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below the butterfly emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!